I'd like to welcome everybody for joining us this evening and thank you for giving up your time with us. This evening, we're going to have our community workshop and we're going to be discussing the Parks, Trails, Open Space Master Plan. This is the third public outreach meeting that we've held. We've received a lot of great information back from the community, which we'll be discussing this evening. We've had 2 public outreach meetings. We've had focus groups, we've had surveys, and we've had individuals provide information on our website. So great information that we'll be able to provide to you this evening. And then at the end, we'll open it up to questions that you may have. So I'd like to get started. So on the next slide. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a background, our current master plan was completed in 1997 and called for an update in 2005. We weren't able to do the update during those times because we did not have funding. Fortunately, we did receive funding 2 years ago in 2020. And so now we're able to start and complete this process. So our capital improvement program sunset in 2010 in the old master plan. City Council funded our current Parks Master Plan along with our lighting and landscaping assessment district update. And then the Parks, Trails, Open Space Master Plan includes the infrastructure that would be included in the Parks, Landscape, and Lighting District assessment. So I just wanted to cover with you real quick. One thing that's going to be real important as we go through this plan is that I want to make it real clear that currently right now in our budget, we have $200,000 for capital improvements. So obviously we're very limited with 28 parks. We have waterfront parks and then all of our trails. And also we have landscape and lighting districts. And that's why we're looking for a citywide assessment. So this will be our guide to that. And these will be kind of running parallel here. The Parks Landscape and Lighting District assessment, we'll be starting that up in the next several months. Reaching out to the community, but that's really what we're going to be looking for to help us fund these projects. It's very difficult for us to work within that $200,000 budget, but here are just a few of the recent projects that we have completed. So Duncan Graham basketball court, you can see we're on the left-hand side of the picture there. We were able to go in and resurface that court, add a new basketball and rim there. And then at Ethelreese Sariva Park, we were able to remove the old structure. You can see very outdated there and add the new structure on the right-hand side. And then also, whenever there's available funding, we do look to other sources. So we were very fortunate. There was Prop 68 funding that was through the State Parks and Recreation. And they had approximately about $178,000 that we were eligible for. So a couple of the projects that we were able to do, you'll see the picnic tables at Community Park. Those are the picnic tables and the serving tables. Those were installed in 1994 and they had not been replaced. So we were able to replace all the tabletops on those. And then also part of that project will be replacing all the barbecues. And then with some additional funding from the Prop 68, we were able to put synthetic turf into the dog park. As you can see on the left, it was a constant battle, putting in new turf probably every 2 to 3 years. And you see the result of that, it pretty much go down to the dirt. So on the right, you see there with synthetic turf, much better surface, lasted a lot longer. And we're very happy with the results of that. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to our consulting team, and our head consultant is Doug Grove, who's the president of RHA Landscape Architects and Planners Incorporated. So I'll turn it over to Doug at this time.
Great, thanks, Mike. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. We're excited to present where we are in the master plan process. One of the things I'm going to say right off the bat is if you have any questions as we're going through that you want to ask, please use the Q&A. If you look on your screen and there's a little Q&A button, you can push on that and then you can type your question in there. We prefer to keep them in there versus the chat because it allows us to answer those easier and keep track of them. So if you can go there, and we have a team from the city as well as ourselves that'll be answering those as we go along. We will take some time, as much time as we need for questions at the end of the presentation, probably about a 30-minute presentation at the most. We do have a few polls we're going to do in the middle of the presentation to kind of get some feedback on what's happening, what you're thinking, and who all of you are. So with this tonight is Pros Consulting, Nile Bott, Vice President of Pros. They do these kind of master plans all over the country. They've been involved in this one since the beginning. We have WRT, which is a landscape architectural planning firm out of the Bay Area. Emily will be on tonight to talk about what their work's been. And then ETC Institute, who did our survey, our statistically valid survey that was mailed out. So Neely will be going over that as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is a couple polls just to kind of find out who we have in our, and these are anonymous. We won't know who says what, but just want to kind of get an idea for who's on the call and kind of your history here with Benicia. So go ahead and click on those, and then we'll show kind of the results. Like a lot of longtime Benicia people, kind of what I expected. That's great. We're going to end it here just about 5 seconds. 4, 3, perfect. So we've got 16 of the 21 that answered were here for 10 years or more, and then even more 5 to 10, a couple in 2 to 5. So that's great because you obviously know the city. You've lived there in the city, and so your input's going to be great. So I'm going to do one other poll here too. That's kind of there we go. Okay, this is going to be more of just kind of see how big, how many people you represent in your household, so we get an idea of. Obviously, we only have 24 of us on the call meeting, but to see how many people we actually are representing, community wide with families and so forth. So, and again, this is anonymous. We don't know who's answer, what the we get the results, but we don't know who you are and what your answer was. So we're going to end the poll now. So we got the majority have 2 in the household that are here, but we do have one down there with 5 or more and 4 or more. So good cross section. So that's great. So thanks for answers. We just wanted to kind of get an idea of who we had in the meetings tonight, so we can get a better idea of kind of input we're going to be getting. So just a quick history on where we've come from and where we're going. We started our existing conditions analysis back in January through April, there kind of as COVID began. And WRT, Emily will be going over some of that. We started our public outreach and engagement, which I'm sure some of you have been involved in. And that started in March of 21 and went through March of this year, kind of with our website and so forth. We've been working on the priority rankings and capital improvement plan based on some of that input the last few months, and that'll continue on into July. We're also updating the goals, objectives, and policies from the 97 plan to match what information we're getting out of this plan. And then we'll also be working on funding strategies in August of this year. And then the goal is to have a draft and final master plan out to the public and the city council in September, November of this year. So we're moving towards the end. We will be done before the end of the year and have a plan that everybody can look at. So I'm going to let Nile Bott from Pros Consulting kind of go over the demographics and trends that we found in the city.
Thank you, Doug, and good afternoon, everybody. So this is data that's obtained from ESRI, Environmental Services Research Institute, and looks at census tract data and population projections. So as you can see, from 2020 to 2035, the blue and the red bars are the ones that get significantly larger over time. That's the 55 plus population, and I refuse to call them seniors. It is the active adult population. Perfect case in point, I've seen Doug bike more in the last 2 years than I may have biked in the last 20. But that's really the population in Benicia. And so this is going to have implications as we think in terms of ADA accessibility, walkability, the kind of offerings we design and provide as well. And at the same time, recognizing that we're still going to have about 34% of the population, more than 1 in 3 people, that are under the age of 35, young families, kids, youth, and so on. So while we have to focus and will in terms of demographic shifts on an active adult population, the young families and youth also need to be kept in mind. So as you'll see on the next slide after this is just a quick snapshot. You'll see the population about 27,000. The median age, which is the exact midpoint, is significantly older than the national averages, which are in the late 30s. In Benicia, it is 45 years old. So half the population is over the age of 45. Half of them is under the age of 45. And as you see in the following slide too, these are some examples of quick trends as well in terms of participation numbers. What you see in the dark green, which are the 5-year trends from 2016 to 2021, you'll see hiking, especially in the last couple of years, things like tennis and pickleball have gotten even bigger. More of the outdoor activities that people can do, trail running, etc., have been much, much larger as well. So outdoor activity has been popular and continues to get even more so. And you'll see in the surveys, when I show you the data as well, what is it that we will look at in terms of trail population connectivity. Also, in terms of the data here with the demographics, this is Esri population projections. We have the total population number by the census, but the breakdown by age, income levels, race, ethnicity, all of that is still not provided by the census, which is why everybody in the country is going by the Esri projections so as to get a more accurate breakdown of the numbers as well. So I know that was one of the questions here that we had in the audience. And so Stephen, I just wanted to answer that for you. So Doug?
Great. Thanks, Neil. Okay, I'm going to have Emily from WRT, Landscape Architects, Planners. They're going to go over kind of what they found as they did some existing conditions analysis.
Yeah, thank you, Doug. We did this existing conditions analysis back in March and April of 2021. We were both on the ground, going to every single park in Benicia, and we were also from our office doing a lot of mapping. So we'll go over both of those things with you folks. First of all, we talk about what's really working in Benicia parks. You will probably know a lot of these things. Mike, you also went through all of the completed projects that you just did. So a lot of this may not be fully applicable a year later. But things we really did notice were the recent improvements. Yes, clean bathrooms, connectivity to parks on sidewalks and trails. Seems like a lot of people in Benicia were using the parks. There were also people from neighboring cities coming in. And some others that we have listed there. I know there was an issue with athletic fields that came up later. So I think this document is always in process of changing. And then we go into what's not working. A lot of this was pretty obvious things that everyone also already knows, like cracking pavement, some outdated furniture. But overall, we still were really impressed by the Benicia Park system. So we're not going to dwell on this for too long. And again, after we spent some time in the field, we did start mapping everything. Here we have the list of parks. We went to truly every single one of them. And as for the current park classifications, only the Benicia Community Park is a larger community park. Every other park is just a neighborhood park. So it's a bit smaller. And we did also want to point out that along the waterfront, there isn't any formal parks, but there are a lot of these street end open spaces that we found very intriguing. This is the distribution of amenities. One of the things we noticed was there was a big concentration in the community park, of course, and there were a few that weren't quite as well represented as some of the other amenities. And this map is kind of the marriage between our on the ground work and our mapping work we're showing which parks were in really good conditions and which ones were in poor conditions. There was only one in poor condition. Everything else seemed to be working very well. And now for a very fun map is the city bike network and the regional trails. You'll see that there's a really big regional trail corridor going along the Benicia waterfront, and that's something we want to continue to focus on, along with the Ridge Trail that goes along the west side of Benicia. The bike trails connect a lot of the parks really well. And another point that we want to bring up is some of these bigger trail themes that are coming through, like the Benicia Crosstown Trail. And this is also a point where we want to start pointing out all of this area that's zoned for open space. As Neely was saying, outdoor fitness is becoming really popular, and maybe using some of this outdoor space in conjunction with the trails could be something for Benicia later on. All right, and surface areas. Obviously, the downtown is very well covered. There's a lot of coverage in Southampton as well, but there is the middle part that's not quite as well covered, and hopefully we would address that with some open space opportunities. And there are some schools on there as well that we did not count as part of this because they're not always available, but we do recognize that that's an amenity available to Benicia residents. This is a close-up version of what we saw with the trails and bike map, but this one is what we really wanted to point out, the open space network that's in there and all of the different types of open space, along with the Lake Herman Regional Park. There are also, again, the Benicia Crosstown Trail, and we just really want you to see the opportunity for more trails moving through this hillside area that's woven into all of the areas in the Southampton Park. And also, we want to look at waterfront as well. Like I said, we are very intrigued by the street and open spaces. There's no formal trail linking them right now, but there are plans to really build out the San Francisco Bay Trail, which of course serves as part of the Carquinez Scenic Loop Corridor and the Great California Delta Trail, among others.
All right, so thanks, Emily. I'm going to do another poll here just to kind of get a feeling for who we have on this call and or this meeting, and what you feel are the most important things that you do or participate in Benicia. So just go ahead and click on, just pick one. I mean, there's probably some that you do as well, but the thing that you do the most. So just pick that one answer, get us an idea of where our group is tonight. All right, and the poll here in a few seconds. So we've got a good majority, about 16%. The number one thing they do, and most participate, is walking, hiking, running, which makes sense. Biking's only 5%, and then you have youth sports, court sports, adult sports are kind of all right there in that same range. So walking, hiking, running is obviously probably the most common thing we're seeing in a lot of our park master plans. Doesn't mean the other things aren't important. It just shows you that those are things that we need to make sure are represented as well. So the public outreach and engagement, what we've done so far is we had in March of 2021, we had the meeting with department directors. So all the different departments in the city. We also met with city council and staff to get their input on what things that they see and would like to see in the city, as far as park development and trail development. And then we spent a few days with stakeholder focus groups. I think we had about 15 groups. Some of you may have been involved in those, and those were focused on youth sports all the way to a senior population, public art, a big variety of groups. So over 100 participants that got to be a part of that process and really got a lot of great input. Some of the things that we found, strengths are identified by the focus groups. And we had a lot of parks for the number of residents in the city, which is true. An excellent park system is well maintained. There is robust programs for the residents. The residents love the parks. extensive open space system, which is very true, more than we see typically in most cities. The parks support a range of uses by sports groups, good access to the waterfront, could always use some more. Strong community support, again, very true, very well represented. Strong and talented staff team with a community services department, and great views from the hills and the shoreline, which I loved when I was up there riding through, walking the trails. It was very beautiful. Some opportunities and top priorities identified by the focus groups were trails access, wayfinding and connectivity, increasing access for dogs, so more dog parks, consider lighting, surfacing, and other improvements to increase use of sports fields. Passage of the lighting and landscape district that Mike was talking about is critical to successful implementation of the master plan. As Mike mentioned earlier, that's a key. We can identify, and we will, all the things that everybody wants to do, but if we don't have the money to do them, they're just going to stay in the plan. So we have to make sure we get some funding approved to get those taken care of. We need to right size the amount of parks and open space, build partnerships with the school district, as Emily mentioned, and other partner agencies that we can use some of their space to help fulfill some of the needs of the city. Increase access to pickleball, tennis, and bocce courts, increase shade and seating in parks along trails, improve access to the great views from hilltops and key vistas, increase the shoreline access. You've got a lot of places where you can do it or could do it, and we just want to make sure we get those improved so you can get access there. Evaluate opportunities to implement innovative all abilities playgrounds. So again, the one main downtown, the city park would be one we'd be looking at. Look at opportunities to integrate public art and performance space in park projects. Upgrade and repurpose existing park facilities to meet current needs. So taking care of some of the field conditions and getting those up to speed so that all the sports teams can use them, and then consider opportunities to increase parks access for the east side. So those are some of the things we found just through those 3 meetings with the directors and with the staff and then with the public focus groups. We've also had a city website or project website up for the entire length, and you probably have all been there. We've had 2,000 plus users, over 5,700 page views, and about 170 comments and counting. And that basically ran from April 1st to December, and it's still on. I mean, these are numbers then, it's still up and you can still go access that. So those are the numbers that were through that April and December of last year. As Mike had mentioned earlier, we had our first community meeting, which we got some input, and many of you people were on that on the 20th of April. We had a second one on the 29th. Virtual. We are looking to have a in-person meeting in June to present some stuff, and I'll cover that later. But so far it's all been virtual, but I really appreciate all the input we've gotten from everybody, even though we've only had virtual meetings. So some of just the main things, takeaways we've got so far is that regularly used amenities, shoreline access, trails and pathways, playgrounds. Most important improvements that we've heard: expanding, connecting the trail system, more shade structures and picnic tables, and then improving and expanding restroom facilities, the preferred communication, city website, activity guide, and then the email was the things that we found as far as the ways you want to be communicated to by the city. I'm going to bring Neely back on. He's going to talk briefly about the mail out survey that went out last year and some of the results of that.
Great, thank you, Doug. And so this, as Doug mentioned, all the different mechanisms we have were subjective in nature. What we wanted to also ensure is we get input that is truly representative of the entire community and is statistically reliable as well. So based on that, that's where we had ETC Institute that worked with Mike, Vic, and the staff as well as with the consulting team to craft the questionnaire that was then mailed out throughout the city. So if you can go to the next slide for a second, please. So this was a 5-page survey. It was sent by mail. It had a one-time online use link that households could use as well. The goal was 400 based on the population to be statistically valid, but the community showed up in significantly higher numbers. So we exceeded the goal by over 10%. We had almost 450 completed survey responses. So I want to show you a sampling of questions as we go forward, but just for a second on the previous one, Doug, all the mumbo jumbo here, if you would, it really just means that for anything to be statistically reliable, you have to be able to repeat the process over and over again and get consistent results. And in this case, what we can tell you is that 95 out of 100 times, the results that you're about to see will be in a margin of error of plus or minus 4.5%. That's what makes this reliable through a random anonymous process and the ability to ensure that the results are within a certain degree of variance only. So if you look at some of the findings here, we asked about the usage and ratings, and these are among the highest numbers I've seen in the country. Nationally, the average for visiting park or trails is 75%. In Benicia, it was over 95%. That is just fantastic. Next one, in terms of trails as well, we asked about the level of support to say, based on these trail projects, which ones are you very supportive, somewhat supportive, not sure, or not at all supportive? If you see the small red ones, those are the ones people have said that are not supportive. That's literally the margin of error, 5% or less. So by and large, the community have indicated a high level of support, with even the least support being over 68%. So more than 2 out of 3 people supported every one of these projects, with the highest level of support, if you would, 83%, more than 4 out of 5 people supporting the shoreline pathway and the alignment of the bay, the ridge, and the delta trails as well, all the way from the Benicia Martinez Bridge to downtown waterfront to the state recreation area. Next one, please. So this is where we asked about a series of different facility amenity priorities and said, do you have a need for any of these? Do your household members have a need for this as well? The number one were restrooms, followed by trails, open space with trails and benches, trees and landscape, and waterfront parks. Shade was followed closely after, along with multi-use trails, small neighborhood parks, picnic areas, and shelters. Now, along with this, we also followed up by asking about which ones of them do they have an unmet need for, and then the importance for that. As you see in the next slide, this is where we asked about the actions they will take to improve that, and which actions are they actually most willing to fund. So by far, if you look in terms of those that have had at least over 20%, improving existing restrooms and trail system or expanding that, improving, expanding waterfront parks, developing new trails, maintaining and reinvesting in the walking paths within the parks itself, tree planting and maintenance, and then barren areas with native plants were the ones that at least 21 or 20% or higher have said this would be in their top 4 actions that they would be most willing to fund. So you look at the next one here, and this is really the key, because this took all the survey results, the combination of what is important, what is a need, and from that, what is an unmet need is what raised to the top. The maximum possible score was 200. So here you can see multi-use paved trails was close to 170, the highest, very closely followed by restrooms, multi-use unpaved trails, an outdoor amphitheater, shade structures, waterfront parks, accessible open space with trails, a splash pad, canoe kayaking and water access, trees and landscaping were all in the high priority areas. Doug, next one, please. So quick summary here as well. In general, trail and park usage is high. There is definitely satisfaction with the level of parks and trails. High priority amenities are things that we've seen around the country, but they're especially high here as people spend more time outside. The need for shade and restrooms is very high. Paved and unpaved trails. Obviously, you have a tremendous asset with the waterfront, so more parks, and an amphitheater and performing arts venue, supporting and completing trail projects, and generally improving the existing parks, trail, and open space system were all things that were very high for the community. Some other amenities, we see this around the country as well. Individual areas and amenities typically tend to be lower because there's a smaller group that will participate in one particular sport, for example. versus when you have trails or parks as a whole, you have the broadest geography. And looking at the fact that 2 out of 3 people in Benicia are going to be over the age of 55, that's why we see some more of these amenities typically tend to be much higher. Now, we mirrored this survey questionnaire and did the same thing online. Of course, it wasn't statistically valid, which is why you can see some of the results that may or may not be representative of the entire community, but they tend to be sometimes skewed compared to the statistically valid survey. We had close to 477 responses. And in this case, online, there was strong support for soccer field improvements. Again, this is not a community-wide statistically valid sample. So these are important, but not as important as a statistically valid survey results to be kept in mind. Doug, back to you.
All right, great. Thanks, Nilay. So we presented this to City Council. I'm sure some of you, we had quite a few residents on that in that meeting. We appreciate you got everybody that was there and the comments you did, and we wanted to make sure we kind of documented what we heard in that meeting. That was on February 15th. Wanted to ensure the input from families and youth sports when they addressed the trail paving conditions, consider demand for pickleball with the aging population, as Nilay was referencing, address the condition of the sports fields. We heard that loud and clear, something that's going to be high priority for us. Identify impacts of new housing. They are doing a housing study right now that Vic, who's in our team here with the city, is working on that. Consider demand for soccer fields. So that's, we know that's a very important issue. Incorporating public-private funding strategies to help fund some of these ideas. The trail network is important. Incorporating public art. What are the impacts of sea level rise at the state recreation area? Providing activities for children in downtown, and consider adding historical assets to the park system. So those are things we heard from the council and from the residents at the city council meeting on the 15th. So those all go into our overall look at what we're going to be addressing as we move forward. I'm going to let Vic going to be talking about the trails vision and what we're looking at from the trail standpoint.
Thank you, Doug. Good evening, everyone. So we're just going to touch briefly on trail opportunities and just reiterate some of the high points, which also reflect the direction that we received in the surveys last year, which Nilay touched on earlier. So some of our key opportunities that we see are the Carquinez Strait Scenic Loop Trail, that shared shoreline alignment of the Bay Ridge and Delta trails. And this has been a city priority dating back to the 1970s. And, you know, it's a work in progress, a little bit challenging, but bit by bit, that keeps being improved. And so we'll continue to look at opportunities to improve that alignment. Another key opportunity is the Bay Area Ridge Trail, so that open space alignment, the shoreline alignment that meets with the open space alignment that runs from Benicia State Recreation Area through the Benicia Vallejo open space buffer. And that continues out to Blue Rock Springs, but also we have the trail spur, the Whiskerson Trail Spur that connects to Benicia Community Park. So a great open space trail there. The Crosstown Trail, which has been in the city's planning for also since the 70s, and is one of those unknown assets with some pieces that are in place, but some gaps that we need to close. And that connects from the Benicia State Recreation Area to Lake Herman and to the Water's End neighborhood, as well as nearly to East Second. And thank you, Steve Getz, for correcting that point. But it gets that connection through a couple of key open space areas, the Brido open space, the Water's End open space, and then connecting to a couple of our major parks, including Benicia Community Park, Lake Herman Regional Park, Jack London Park, and of course, Benicia State Recreation Area. And then the fourth key trail opportunity is Lake Herman Regional Park Trails. We've got a 570-acre park with just a simple one trail alignment that runs out and back. But our existing master plan calls for a trail system in the open space there. And that's an opportunity that we want to revisit in this plan as well. And then our final piece is looking at open space trail opportunities throughout the city. And this is something that I think is not real well defined at this point. And we would love to hear feedback tonight and going forward if you see opportunities for those internal open space trail opportunities in the Southampton neighborhood. And Doug, if you could go to the next. Yeah, so just a few visuals. This is such an amazing landscape here in the Benicia Vallejo open space buffer. This is the Ridge Trail alignment there. If you can go to the next, Doug. And then again, out at Lake Herman Regional Park, we're blessed to have this amazing landscape to work with. And then finally, looking at the Crosstown Trail again here in Waters End and Rideau Open Space, a couple of great assets that really serve the neighborhoods well, but have larger connectivity potential. So, thank you.
All right, great. Mike, I think this is your slide, or is this mine?
So our approach to our capital projects, number one is focus on maintaining existing infrastructure. And that's so important. And we've said this throughout the process. We have a very aging infrastructure in our park system. And if a lot of you obviously have been out in our parks, you've seen that. And this is something we need to address. And again, we'll keep, sending the message that currently right now we're very limited on money. We try to make as many improvements as we can with the funds we have available. And if new funds do become available, the existing infrastructure is going to be a high priority. And then secondly, ensure we have adequate funding. And that's what I've been promoting throughout this workshop and in our past workshops also. And then right size if and where necessary. I think that's very important. I think the message we have gotten from the community so far is that we do have a lot of parks. And if there are areas that we can right size in, that's kind of the message that we're hearing. We're not hearing that we need to build new parks at this time. We do have a couple parks sites that were in our 1997 master plan that will remain in there, but at this time, we're not looking to add any parks. And then develop a clear capital improvement program, ensuring long-term system sustainability, and then create efficiencies where we can. So just going back to the one bullet point there, ensure the long-term system sustainability, that's always been a focus of our staff. And going into this master plan, that's what we need to do. We can't keep adding things that we can't maintain. And that's what we've done in the past. And we're at a point now where everything is starting to deteriorate and it's very difficult to maintain. So we want to make sure that anything we do, we're able to sustain it into the future. Next slide, Doug. And I'll pass this back to Doug.
Great, thanks, Mike. So what all this is going to end up with, and this is just a kind of a placeholder to show you what you're going to have at the end of this, is that right now we're starting to work a little bit with staff on the capital improvements plan to see kind of, based on input we've been getting from the community so far, getting that information to a large spreadsheet. And that'll be kind of a working copy for the staff. This is what we call a strategy matrix, which will be what are the goals for 0 to 3 years, 4 to 5, beyond 5 years, and they're ongoing. So this will expand a lot bigger than what you see on the screen. We'll be plugging in the citywide values and the master plan big moves that we develop as we move forward over the next few months. But this will be a one-page, like a one-stop shop where the residents or staff or city council, planning commissions, anybody can come along and see where things are at. When do they plan to be done? And what's the cost going to be? So it's going to be a really great document that's going to kind of give us a direction on how to handle this capital projects that we're going to be having moving forward. So the key projects for the next 10 years, we're looking at capital reinvestment throughout the system, soccer and ball fields at BCP, at Benicia Community Park, synthetic turf and lighting possibly, pickleball courts, trails, as Vic talked about, and a lot of the different trail opportunities. And then there are also parks that need a master plan, somewhere that still haven't been designed. Bridgeview Park, 9th Street, St. Paul's Square, obviously it's there, but how do we redo that possibly? City Park improvements, and then the Lake Herman Regional Park, as Vic had mentioned. Additional priority projects for the next 10 years, we're looking at right now: playgrounds, pathways, shade structures, trees and landscaping, off-leash dog parks, community gardens, restrooms, amphitheater, outdoor fitness equipment, the public art, and a splash pad. So what I was going to do is I want to do a quick polling, and this is just a poll of the ones we have here, but it just helps us as we move forward in this. I'm going to launch this poll, which is going to be, whoops, let's see, yeah. So this one is just picking one. Which of the following key projects is the most important to you? So again, this is just going to give us a temperature on the attendance at this meeting and what you all would prefer. But it all goes into our big collection pot of what we're looking at from the public input standpoint. we're just about there. We've got about 21 responding every time. So show the results. So looks like the kind of a toss up between capital reinvestment throughout the system and the trails closures, all the trail work, down to soccer fields, pickleball course a little bit higher, but parks need a master plan. So kind of what we're seeing, pretty typical of what we're seeing through this statistically valid survey and the online survey that that Neela mentioned. Doesn't mean the ones that are getting less votes are less important, and we're not suggesting that at all. But this kind of helps to confirm what we're seeing as we go through some of these studies. I'm going to launch the click here. So I'm going to do a second poll on this, and this is going to be basically, now you get a chance to pick one more. Which of the following additional priority projects is the most important to you? So some of the smaller items that we didn't cover in the bigger picture items. So we're getting close to the end here. Okay, we'll end the poll. Got 22 on this one. One more person. All right, great. So on this one, we've got trees, landscaping, pathways, restrooms, all very important. Dog park right in behind that, shade structures, none for playgrounds. That's interesting. Okay. And then community garden was one. So again, we keep track of all this, and we'll put into our data as we move forward. So kind of just to wrap up here, this is I have to say where we've been. We've had our public outreach meetings. We're updating the goals and objectives as we speak. We're putting together the priority rankings and capital improvement plan, funding strategies in August, and draft and final master plan in September, November. And one of the things that as I mentioned earlier, our next step here is we will be meeting with the public again in June. We haven't set a date yet, June, early July, to actually meet in person with a lot of the ideas and the projects and things that have come up on at a really rough level on graphic maps of all the different parks. So you'll be able to come in, kind of see what's being proposed, and be able to mark up on those plans and give comments and continue the public input process. So we're looking forward to that meeting. Actually get to see you all in person. This has been kind of a unique situation, having to do most of it virtual with the COVID issue, but we're looking forward to seeing you in the next coming months in person on that. So with that is kind of the end of our presentation. I'd like to open up if anybody wants to raise your hand there. I can allow you to talk, and you can come in and let us know. So Marilyn, I just let you in, so go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate this presentation. And I'm sorry to say, as though I'm late to the game here, I'm a 34-year resident in Benicia. I came with my husband in 1986. We were both artists. He died 10 years ago. But I remain very active in town over all these years. And I remember back in 1985, in fact, that there was, and what I'm remembering is Jerry Hayes, when he was running for mayor, talked about a plan for the East Side. And it was an East Side plan done in 1985, where it talked about needs of the East Side and the need for improvements. And certainly, one of the things I see missing from your discussion of park sites is the National Register District out in the Arsenal. And then I've been directed to notice that in Chapter 4, page 13 of your inventory of parks, it's called number 15, Clock Tower. And the Clock Tower Park was envisioned, I guess, to encompass the area between the clock tower and what we call the commanding officer's quarters, where now Arts Benicia has occupied, to great advantage, I think, for the future of the area in terms of its potential and the vision that it suggests for development of the area for recreational, passive recreational use. The East Side needs a park. I can attest to that. I live at East K Street, right across the street from the school district. And the only parks that are available to me within walking distance that is comfortable are ball fields, and I don't play ball. So my feeling is, and I've spent the whole of last year talking to Planning Commission, council members on an individual basis, the mayor, with a group of people who are organized as the Benicia Arsenal Park Task Force, and we are lobbying for to acquire that property out in the Arsenal along Jefferson Street to basically memorialize the meaning of the Arsenal as a national significant historic site, as well as a state historic site, which was landmarked by the state in 1935, and which we have yet to acknowledge fully the importance to our community, even though the Arsenal Conservation Plan developed in 1993 signifies its importance to our town, but that hasn't been updated since 1993 when it was created. So I highly recommend that there is a gap in our thinking about what the East Side deserves, what the city of Benicia deserves, what our state deserves, that we focus on the advantages of creating a park out there, and that we can acquire the land with funds that I think can be collected from some major players in town who own properties and hazards around the area. So I'm looking for a big vision here, and not to forego the meaning of this park for our future in Benicia and what it will do as a draw for heritage tourism, for bringing people in to enjoy a 19th century ambiance of a Civil War era right in our midst. If you bring a visitor to Jefferson Street right now, they don't know where they are. They ask questions. They say, what is this? And people are out there using it constantly, biking, walking their dogs. It's already park-like. And it all, according to page 4-13 in your inventory, it suggests that there were phase 1, phase 2 for developments of that park. And then interestingly, between 2000 and 2010, no improvements are recommended. And I know from my activities that the Lower Arsenal specific plan was envisioned in about 2005. And it included residential development possibilities in that area. And that has made for 20 years a very difficult situation. Well, actually, ever since the property was bought and went into private hands, we've been dealing with this issue. But I'd like to look beyond that and imagine what is possible and not forego this possibility of a park. And believe me, people from Southampton, once they learned what was going on there, people who bike know the Arsenal district as extremely beautiful to bike through. Talk to Nancy Lund on the bicycle committee. Talk to anybody who goes out there on any regular basis to enjoy that last open space on the east side of any significant scale. And that open space has been there since 1850 when the Army came to town and developed the area. Do you realize what an advantage that is? And we have not made anything of it yet. And that's my comments. And I hope we can, even though I'm late to this game here, I've been at this since February of last year, talking about Arsenal Park possibility. And I want to make sure that the Parks Department understands how important this is to the city of Benicia economically and culturally. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Millie. And you're not late to the party. We're still in this process. So this is a great chance. That's why we have this meeting tonight, another one in June. So there's still plenty of chances for input. So no, don't feel like you're late to this game. You're right on time for bringing this up. So thanks for your input on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You bet. I'm gonna have Jan come in and talk. Go ahead, Jan, you're available.
Hi, Doug. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, fantastic. So yeah, so again, and I'm sorry to
Sorry. Yeah, the computer, there we go. Go ahead. I'm sorry, it cut you off and I had to reset it. Okay, go ahead.
That's okay. No. I just wanted to thanks for the presentation. I do, however, I mean, again, a lot of this, what was presented here was presented already back in February. I do encourage you to seriously take into account some problems in the way some questions are asked. So as you know, I represent the Benicia youth soccer community, which is the largest youth sport community in Benicia, and we have no field. I don't mean we have poor fields, we have no fields. Currently, we play on baseball outfields, which volunteers have to line. Nobody has to basically build a baseball field in order for baseball or softball to play. We have to build our own fields, pull out the flags and everything, pull everything out and move fields, move goals so that the fields can be mowed and everything. I get hate mail on a regular basis from parents because the quality of the turf is pretty damaged and their kids are injuring ankles because of the mole holes due to the drought and everything. I understand that we're talking about a budget of $200,000 and it's not going to solve it here. And Mr. Dodson, if this is not the venue to discuss this, I will gladly shut up. But I have been pretty hurt by how a few of the questions are asked. Again, the use of rectangular soccer fields doesn't really lead people to believe that those are soccer fields. It could be baseball, it could be, sorry, basketball or volleyball. It really doesn't, it's not very specific. The other thing, again, the way some questions are asked can be misleading. Like if you ask a question, would you like more work for soccer and ball fields? Again, because it includes ball fields and there's already over 16 of them in the city, more people will be inclined to say, no, we don't need more ball fields. But if you were to ask the question only, do we need a soccer field? It would be a different story. Again, I know that there's a lot of things here, and I'm a hiker. I definitely love our trails. I would love to see more of them. But right now we're talking about improvement versus existence. There is no soccer installation in this city. So that's it. That's my last comment.
Great, thanks, John. It wasn't lost, and I appreciate your comments at City Council. We documented those, and that's why you saw that come up specifically in some of those questions we had tonight, because we know how important that is. So thanks for your input. I appreciate it. Let Molly, you want to come on in and let us know what your questions or comments are?
Yes, I have to agree wholeheartedly with everything that Marilyn Bardet said, and I agree with Jan as well. My biggest points are, if we only have 100K, have we looked at all of the grant options available to us? I, for instance, am newly senior and really miss the fact that I can't go to any of our parks and swing because they need to lift me into 90% of the seats. And just I'm looking for typical opportunities that a playground would offer anybody over, say, age of 4. I think that as small as we are in our town, our priorities are great. I love this process we've gone through. I love the opportunity of filling out the online form, but $100,000 is nothing. We all know that. And I just want to make sure that we've looked into any grant opportunities. Thank you.
Thanks, Molly. Yes, for sure. As I'll go back one slide here, one of the things we'll be doing in August, once we get through what we're proposing to have done over the next 3 to 5 to 20 years, is looking at opportunities for funding, whether it's with the assessment district that Mike had mentioned or grant opportunities. There's a lot of grant opportunity out there now, a lot of money that's coming out for different types of projects. So the idea is first identify what we want to do, what we need, and then go after and find out ways to target to get those things. So yes, grants will definitely be a part of that strategy. So great, thank you for the input. Stephen, what do you got for us? You're on mute, so make sure you unmute yourself. I wish I could do that for you. Hey there, Stephen. I'm not sure he's still there. All right. Anybody else have any questions? Want to come in and talk at all, or?
I think he's there, Doug. He's just muted.
Yeah, I know. Stephen, if you're there and you're talking, we can't hear you. You're muted, so just unmute yourself so we can hear what you're saying. Well, in the meantime, I will let Donald come on in and let us know what your thoughts or questions are.
Yeah, good evening. I'm very sympathetic to the city's case of sustainability and let's not build anything that we can't maintain. But I'm curious, particularly in terms of parks on the east side, that if there was an independent entity, say a foundation or local group that was going to fund and maintain a park, would the city be interested in that? I mean, that's a situation where they wouldn't be bearing the brunt of the financial burden to buy it or maintain it, but would the city be interested in partnering on something like that if that opportunity was available? Thank you.
Mike,
Yeah.
maybe I'll let you, do you want to cover that, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, that'd be something I need to get more information on and what that would consist of. Because like I said before, right now, in terms of the parks, we have a lot. They take a lot of time and a lot of money to maintain. So I would have to see an example of that before I really could answer that question, to see how that's structured and then how it's maintained, and you know, into the future, how that's maintained. And because my concern would be, is there a time if they could maintain it, it comes back to the city? Because we've had not necessarily agreement like that, but with structures in town or things that have been built in town that were going to be maintained by groups, but eventually couldn't. So they did come back to the city and we ended up maintaining them. So again, I need to get more information on that.
Okay.
Stephen, I'm sorry you're having trouble unmuting. If you want, I can meet with you offline after the meeting tomorrow just to get your input verbally. I don't have it on my phone, so I'm not sure how to unmute it on the phone. I'm sure there's a button somewhere, but sometimes on the phone it's kind of hidden. So feel free to reach out to Mike. You can get to my contact information, and I gladly sit down and talk with you on the phone for a second or so about what you wanted to give us input on. Allison, what do you have for us?
I'm unmuted. Yay.
You are, yay. I hear you.
So Stephen and I are friends, if it's the same Stephen I'm thinking of. And we wanted to speak for Benicia Tree Foundation. We want to express, first of all, we both love the idea of having the path go around Lake Herman, which appears to be on the new map, and I'm very happy to see that. Also, there will be possibly some building going up, possibly at the bottom of Hastings, and it would be appropriate to look at planting trees and landscaping around that area. Also, there's a possibility for more trees and possibly native habitat plantings around the Brieto Trail. Those are things that we both discussed. I'm probably forgetting things because he's a better speaker than I am.
Well, like I said, I can talk with him offline too and get his input as well. So that we'll make sure that happens. So
Excellent.
Thank you. I appreciate your input. Anybody else want to chime in? You really appreciate you all coming out tonight or coming in tonight to the meeting and giving your input. So a lot of good things coming up in the Q&A. We've got those all documented. Stuff in the chat, we've got that documented as well. So we'll have all that as part of our input process. So if there's no more, maybe want to make any comments, we'll probably look to wrap up here, and we'll be, the fact that you registered for this is great because we have an email address so we can make sure you're aware of the next meeting, which comes up in June or July. That'll also be on the website. It'll go out through the other ways things were advertised for this meeting. So please stay engaged. Mike, do you want any wrap up at all before?
Yeah, I just want to again thank everybody for coming out this evening and providing us their feedback. you know, we've heard, we definitely hear all of you. We hear what you're saying. We know what your priorities are. And I think the next meeting in person will be a really good meeting. We'll start to, you know, map all of your suggestions into our park system, and then it'll be more interactive where we can have those conversations with you. I think we're gonna have to, you know, and again, I know I bring it up, but we're gonna have to really look at the existing facilities we do have and how can we expand them and how can we make them better to allow more use on them. Because it's going to be very difficult, and within this master plan, I want to make sure that these are things that we can accomplish. I don't want to put things down on paper that we can't do because we just don't have the funding for it. So I think, you know, start really thinking about that, or what are ways that we can expand our existing facilities to make them more usable to the community, and what improvements can we make in our park system, and within a 10-year period. Obviously, we talk about the funding we currently have right now, makes it very difficult, but there are going to be hopefully funding options in the future that will allow us, one, to at least get back to a standard that we're really happy with within our park system to make these improvements to our fields that we currently have today. And I think that's really important too, improving what we have in our parks and making improvements into the future, but being realistic, what can we do in this 10 years? So I think this next meeting we'll get into that. I think we have a great capital project list that we're establishing that we'll be sharing in the future. And I think that'll give you a lot of insight into how this plan is really coming together. So again, I just want to thank everybody for joining us this evening.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. And we'll see you in a few months.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.